name is Ken Gearhart. I grew up in Marion, Pennsylvania. I've lived in Pennsylvania my whole life. I've always lived within 30 miles of Gettysburg, and the very first time I came to Gettysburg was at the age of 10 years old on a school field trip. We reenacted Pickett's Charge. We were studying the Civil War at the time. Pickett's Charge is what is considered to be the high water mark of the Confederacy. Of course, there's a lot of other battles that took place here that were just as important. Basically, about 15,000 Confederate soldiers attacked the center of the Union line, and for many different reasons, one being the fact that they walked across an open mile of nothing but fields, they were decimated. Their casualty rates in some cases were upwards of 75-85%.
Fourscore and 7 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Now, we are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation, or any nation so conceived and so dedicated, can long endure. We are met on a great battlefield of that war. We have come to dedicate a portion of that field as a final resting place for those who here gave their lives that that nation might live. It is altogether fitting and proper that we should do this. But in a larger sense, we cannot dedicate, we cannot consecrate, we cannot hallow this ground. The brave men, living and dead, who struggled here, have consecrated it far above our poor power to add or to detract. The world will little note, nor long remember, what we say here, but it can never forget what they did here. It is for us, the living, rather to be dedicated here to the unfinished work which they who fought here have thus far so nobly advanced. It is rather for us to be here dedicated to the great task remaining before us, that from these honored dead we take increased devotion to that cause for which they gave the last full measure of devotion, that we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation, under God, shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth.
I had always been into ghosts since I was 5, 6 years old, as soon as I was able to start reading. But I just started, reading books about Gettysburg. I heard stories about Gettysburg being haunted, and I put two and two together, and it became an obsession for me. Because the experience that I was having of deja vu and believing that I had been here for this battle was what was overwhelming my mind at that time. It led me to believe in reincarnation. Actually, let me start by telling you what happened to me when I was staying in here.
Yeah, please.
Introduce yourself, please. Oh. My name is Kenneth Gearhart. I'm a storyteller here at the Farmersworth House. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Um, I'm John Mirage. I am a psychic medium.
All right. Is that good enough?
I think that's good enough.
That'll work for me.
Okay.
All right, now I was staying, it was April 14th I was staying in here. Patio Day managed to hook me and Holly up. You guys have met Holly.
We met Holly.
You met Holly, the carriage driver.
Mm-hmm.
She sat on that bed over there, and I was sitting in this bed, and I was talking to someone about it, and I said, well, what's up with that room? And they said, well, which bed are you staying in? And I said, the window bed. And all they did was laugh. They wouldn't tell me exactly what the story was behind it.
I got up here and laid down in that bed, and as soon as I laid down in that bed, it was about 10 o'clock at night or so, 9:30, 10 o'clock. It just started to feel weird. Like I was intruding on someone else's territory. You know, that's the best way I could describe it. And I decided that if I was going to stay up all morning long, like early morning, from 12 o'clock to like 4 o'clock, I had to take a nap. So about 10:30, I laid back and I closed my eyes and I started to take a nap and started to dream that I was in this room here and that Holly was on the bed beside me, looking through my notebook as she was. And I got up and I went to the bathroom and I came back in my dream, of course. And I was laying there and I saw an orangish, reddish energy ball right about here in this part of the room. And it was like sending these pulse waves out towards me. And it would run up my body and I could feel it like paralyzing me. And the closer it got up my body, the more panicked I would become. And as it would hit my head, my ears would start ringing like so loud and so painfully that I just wanted nothing more than to get out of it. So I tried and I tried and I tried to get Holly's attention. I tried to move my hand or, point at her or move my foot, point at her with my foot, whatever I could do, but I could not move, couldn't say anything. And then she said that at one point I stopped breathing for about 10 or 15 seconds. What I was trying to do was to get a deep breath so that I could just get up or say something. And just as soon as she was ready to get over and shake me, I just shot up out of the bed. And my first words were, "Oh my God," like that. So she threw me my notebook and told me to write it down. I wrote down what had happened. The weirdest thing about it was, while I was dreaming about this, I had total cognizance. I knew where she was at. I knew where she was at in my notebook even. And it was very weird. We stayed up here the rest of the night, and in between my cigarette breaks and going to the bathroom, Holly said that she would see shadows moving around through here. In fact, she mistook one of them for me. I went into the bathroom and she said that there was a shadow standing right over here. And then I came back from the bathroom and laid down, and she was half awake when this was all happening. She looked over at me and she said, "Did you just go to the bathroom?" I said, "Yeah, why?" She said, "Because I thought you were just in here a second ago before you went in." I said, "What are you talking about?" She says, "There was a shadow right by your bed moving around over there." And I'd go out here, and every time I walked out to smoke a cigarette, it sounded like someone was walking away from the door up the hallway. So I'd walk up, and I wouldn't see anyone there. I just thought that maybe it was, other guests of the house that were staying here. Just being nosy, I don't know. I was laying here in the bed that night actually, about 2:30 in the morning. I was half asleep. I was getting ready to fall asleep. And I heard a voice in my head with a very distinct southern tone to it, telling me that they knew me before in a past life, that they had marched up here with me, and that usually they give people problems in this bed because the feeling that I got was whoever slept in this bed was one of them that was killed out on the porch. And he enjoyed his last night of rest in this bed. That's what I picked up from it. And that since they had known me before, they were willing to let me alone for the rest of that night. So I bid him good night and fell asleep and slept like a baby till that morning.
And what was the information you found out about them knowing you again, and how did that all come about?
They said that I looked a lot like I did back then.
Mm-hmm.
That my eyes were a little bit different colored and that I had a little bit darker hair, but I was still kind of a comedian of sorts, and I was a nice guy that had a good heart, and that I made the other men laugh, and they liked me for that. But that I was with the unit that was marching up here with them, and that they got stuck here in the town, and we split off and went over towards Devil's Den and all that, the little area around there, a triangular field and all that. And that was just kind of weird for me because I was telling you about my reincarnation earlier. When I was little, I used to have these dreams that I was walking through some woods and I knew I was in a combat situation because I had my weapon and I had my men behind me and everything and all around me.
From a little child, you were doing this?
Yeah. Since I guess when I was about 4 or 5 years old.
Started?
Yeah. And they were more like nightmares than dreams. Like I used to wake up in a cold sweat. Sometimes I'd be crying. Sometimes I'd be shaking so bad. It just scared me so much because it was so real. I'd walk up out of the woods into a little opening and I could see a line of blue men when I was that young. They just looked like men in blue, stretched all along the
Your
ridge.
face looks completely different in the camera right now.
Does it?
Someone's really weird right now. Looks like a totally different person. Look at this, John. Something's totally like he looks totally different. It hadn't done this all night long. I haven't seen this.
Looks like he has
Huh?
Looks like he's got a really dark beard.
It looks like he has darker hair. And his eyes are
Greener.
his eyes are darker set. Like they're deeper. I've never seen anything like this before. What is that? John?
Good question.
Maybe in the next, maybe in the next few moments, I'll have your explanation.
So keep saying what happened. Keep telling your story.
I walk out into this opening, and I look up and I see this men there. And cannonball always hit right in front of me, and I felt the explosion. I felt the heat of the explosion. It threw me back on my back. So I get back up and I started to move forward again, and I was shot in the hand. In my dreams, I always looked down and I could feel it, and I could see it. I could see through my hand. I could see the blood rushing out of my hand and down my arm like that. And I was in shock from it. And I looked up at the field, like up in the hill like that again, and I felt one rip through my chest.
Now you're back to normal.
And then that one always hurt even more. Like it used to catch my breath, and I wouldn't understand it. I'd fall face forward, and I'd start to turn around and crawl back, and that's usually where it cut out on me. And I kept having these dreams for some time, and then I started coming over to Gettysburg. I started studying the Civil War when I was 10 years old, and that's when all this stuff started to make sense to me. And Gettysburg was kind of like my mecca, so to say. I had to come here. I had to be here. So we came on a field trip in 5th grade, and didn't get to go to the Triangular Field, but I knew that's where I wanted to go.
What is that field?
Right below Devil's Den. Like, not on the side with a little round top, but Devil's Den is right here. Little round top's up here. It's back in there.
What happened in that field?
3rd Arkansas attacked a bunch of New York units, and they pushed through, but a lot of them died there. And that was what allowed the Texans to come in from the side and take Devil's Den. They kind of just met up there, but a lot of men from the 3rd Arkansas were killed there. But I started to figure some stuff out, and it started to make sense, and I thought, well, maybe it's possible. I was interested in reincarnation and all that, and then I went to a past life regression therapy session up near Harrisburg one night with Patty and Holly. And I thought to myself, if it's going to happen, it's going to happen now. So they put us under half hypnosis, and they were kind of walking us through it all. And started out, they said, we'll look in a reflecting pool. So I envisioned myself up at the mountains with a little water puddle. I just kind of touched the water, and it just started to, ripple out and slowly dissipated. And I saw another face start to take form other than my own. It was a lot like mine, but it was a darker beard, darker eyes, more green, darker hair. But the facial features were pretty much the same, just a little bit more defined, more like emaciated, like someone who had been working very hard and not eating too much. So I kind of looked at that and thought, well, that's odd. And I saw a family that I had. It was a 22, 23-year-old lady with black hair, and I had a little dark-haired child. That meant a lot to me because I've always been drawn towards dark-haired women. I never understood that until now. But then they said, go to the time of your death. And I saw a sign that said Gettysburg, July 2nd, 1863, and I saw myself walking through these woods. Came up into an opening, and I saw a line of blue, Union soldiers up on the hill above me. I was starting to realize where it was at, because I'd been on the battlefield enough that I knew it very well. A cannonball hit in front of me, blew me on my back. I got up, got shot through the hand. I felt it. I saw it. I looked through it. I looked at it, and I got hit in the chest. I fell face forward, and I started to turn around and crawl back, but they pulled us out of it too quickly, and that was the end of it. I came out of it, and I was crying, and I really didn't want to say anything, and they asked, well, did anyone have anything happen to them, and I told them what had happened, and a couple days later I came back here, and I was just walking out by the rose farm, walking through the woods, and I didn't realize it until I got to that point, but I had inadvertently taken the 3rd Arkansas's path through the woods from the rose farm, right up into that opening, and I stepped right out into the field on that very spot. An electrical shock just kind of beamed through me, just one of those numbers. And then I saw play out in my mind that whole thing. The Union soldiers up on the top getting hit, getting shot, falling face forward, and that was a very interesting experience for me at that time. Then I kept having a few dreams about it every so often. Then I met this freak right here. I went out there one night, and like I said earlier, I really didn't say too much to him. I was skeptical of him. I wanted to test him. So we were out in the middle of the triangular field, walking around there, and I'm starting to talk to him a little bit more, and I stand in that spot and just look at him and say, "Come here." So he walks over, and I take 2 steps back, and I tell him, "Stand in that spot right there. Tell me what you know about it." So he stands in that spot, and about 5 seconds later, he goes into first person. He says, "Well, I walked up out of the woods here, hit this spot, a cannonball hit right in front of me. Blew me on my back, I got back up, and I got shot." But he really didn't say anything about the chest, which I noted that. So I fell face forward and turned around, and I crawled back into the woods, and the woods were further down this time, and it was more brushy up here. I got through there, and some friends of mine picked me up and took me back to the field hospital where they took care of me. They bonded my chest, and then I died. At this point, he looked right at me and said, "But I'm not dead." And that's when it hit him. He looked at me and said, "That was you." And I told him, I just wanted to see what you thought of that situation, what you thought about it. So then what happened with you after that? You had a connection with that place as well, right?
Yeah. I've never had anything like really so vivid when it comes to past lives and stuff. But I guess it was kind of meant for Kenny and I to meet because I was the guy that drug him back to the field hospital.
Back then.
Mm-hmm.
Like that.
Wow.
And I do believe my exact words to you were, "But I'm not dead.
Mm-hmm.
Are you?"
But I'm not dead, are you? Back then.
No, not back then. When
This
I
point,
was
I
given, when I was,
When you saw that.
yeah, when I gave him his past life reading, basically.
And now you're both back here.
Back in Gettysburg, doing our thing here.
And I can't wait to. I want to go home.
I'm only here because they feed me.
Wow.
Then we went out into the field, biker night actually, biker weekend. We went back out to the triangular field, and since that time, he had been teaching me how to become aware of, the energies and the spirits and all that. And we're sitting out there along this stone wall right by my spot. We start seeing movement down in the woods below us by the rocks and all that, by the trees. So we start trying to get them to come up to us. And basically, what I got from it was that they couldn't because of the Union soldiers up on the hill.
They thought they were there.
Mm-hmm. So it was almost 10 o'clock at that time, and he asked me to call out to him. So I'm like, "Come up here, come up here." And then I said, I didn't really think about it, but I said, "Come with us." And no sooner had I said that, and he started to come towards us, we heard, "This is Park Rangers, 10 o'clock, if you're on the battlefield, get off."
Oh.
So we're like, "All right, time to go." So we get up in the car, and I kind of figured that something was still with us. I wasn't too sure. We're driving along, just a quarter of a mile away from there. He looks back and says, "Oh, we're not alone. We got company." I look in my side mirror thinking it was the Park Rangers, and I'm like, "Huh? What?" He's like, "No, in the back seat." So I look back, and that's when I realized that it was back there. And apparently, he wanted to talk to me through him.
And who is this?
One of the spirits from that area.
I don't remember much about it.
So you'll be going on my word here because he was out of it. Like, it wasn't him.
That whole time, I guess I stepped aside somehow, and the last thing I remembered was turning onto the road by the peach orchard, and then back by the high school.
About a half hour later.
I don't know.
Just kind of lost that time.
Yeah, that seems.
Wow.
Us specifically.
And what happened?
Well, he starts. See, Jonathan here has a Louisiana accent. And I'm pretty familiar with different accents. I spent a lot of time down in Kentucky. And the first thing that I noticed was that he was speaking with a Kentucky accent. So that kind of threw me a little bit. And I was like, well, what's your name? He said, my name's Paul, sir. I said, all right, well, what was my name? He said, your name was James, sir. He's like, well, what do I have in connection with James? He's like, well, he was you, sir, and he looked a lot like you. In fact, we've been calling out to you for years, sir, trying to get you down here. And when you started coming down here, we can notice that you were scared sometimes because of what would happen up there. Talking about the Union soldiers, because I'd see Union soldiers up on the hill every once in a while.
You were Confederate back then.
Yeah. I looked exactly like I do now. Uniform and everything. That was part of the... It was so inadvertent, too. Because I picked this stuff out, and then I realized that this is what Arkansas units wore at the time. Because this is what I saw whenever I looked in my vision, you know. Assaults. In my dreams and my vision, I was always wearing this. And I got a green shirt to start with, but it didn't fit. But this white shirt fits. This is what does it. But he said, yeah, sir, I asked him, I said, well, why do you keep calling me sir? He said, because we have a lot of respect for you, sir. You were a good man. You had a good heart on you. I said, all right, well, you know, what do you want me to do now? He said, stop living in the past. You know who you were. You know what you did here. You just can't live in the past. You got to move on with it and appreciate everything that you've got. So, basically, another thing that really threw me was he said, we see your dreams. We know that's why you don't sleep very well at night. Now, I never told Jonathan about my dreams. Up until that point, I had told no one about my dreams that I had. Not a soul. Not even my friend Holly. But that's what really got me there. And then,
Your dreams like what?
the ones that I described to you. Walking up and just Civil War combat in general. Like, I've had other dreams, not specifically that one, but like one other dream that I had was I saw a Union officer on an almost pure white horse riding towards me, and he pulls out his pistol and points it at me like that, and I remember shaking and feeling sweat running down my face. And I pulled up my own weapon at the same time that I shot. A friend of mine beside me shot and knocked him off of his horse before he could shoot, like, at me. But as he was going up, he pulled the trigger like that and discharged his weapon, and the horse threw him back off, and he fell off. And it scared me so much I just snapped out of it and realized that I was sitting in a hunting cabin up in the middle of the mountains. Yeah, stuff like that.
Wow.
He also talked about, like, writing skills and all that. I fancy myself an amateur poetry guy. Poet.
Do you have a poem you want to share with us about everything?
It's not one that I've written, but I think it's one that perfectly describes Gettysburg. The muffled drum said, roll his beat, the soldier's last tattoo. No more on life's parade shall meet that brave and fallen few. On fame's eternal camping ground their silent tents are spread, and glory guards with solemn round the bivouac of the dead. I think that poem describes Gettysburg perfectly.